Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people about their lives and their choices and whether they think they had a choice, how they manage it all. And today my guest is really perfect for that subject. Her name is Stephanie Elizondo Griest. She is the author of a new book called Art Above Everything, One Woman's Global Exploration of the Joys and Torments of a Creative Life. And I love this book. I thought it was so interesting, and I related so much to the question at the heart of it, like, what are we doing as creative people trying to pursue this as our lives? Like, are we crazy? Like, is it worth it? It's hard. And so I wanted some camaraderie, I guess is the word, on this journey, and this book was exactly that. The way I know about it is one of the listeners of this podcast, my friend Robert Nunez. He saw a report on her, I think online, like it was a video, and he sent it to me and he goes, "This sounds like what you talk about all the time." And I'm like, "It is." And so I found her on Instagram and I reached out and we set this up, and I'm really excited about it. I loved this conversation. We go on for quite a while, but I loved it. I just liked what she had on her mind and the stories that she tells in this book. She travels all over the world and spends time with and interviews these artists that have chosen to make their lives about their art, and come what may, and what they've sacrificed for it, and the heart of it is it worth it? She goes to Rwanda, she goes to Qatar, she goes to Mexico, she goes to New York City, she goes to Iceland, and she's got a great voice as a reporter, and so the details and the facts are really interesting, but also her own story, her own journey. I related to it so much, and I loved this conversation. So stick around for that. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you like this podcast, there's some things you can do to support it. You could go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. Help me cover my expenses. I really appreciate that. There's a thing there called Buy Me a Coffee, which you just click a button and I get a little bit of money for a coffee. So I always love that. The other thing you can do is I've started a Patreon/Substack sequel to this podcast, like a spin-off called Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay, that you can support for $5 a month. You get an episode every week. It's the same kind of stuff I talk about on here, things that didn't make the show, but also I like to end with something around happiness, the science of it, tips and tools, things I've been thinking about, things I've been reading. It's a subject that's very interesting to me, especially when I think about this conversation that we have coming up, the one you're going to listen to. It's like, if you don't get what you want out of life, can you still be happy? And I think that's a question that I've had to ask myself in a really, really serious way in the last 10 years. And it's getting harder, too. So, I think you can. Absolutely, you can. You just have to make some shifts, and you can be really happy, even amidst the chaos. So that's what I like to focus on that. The other thing you can do is become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of a group of shows with these crazy kids, Derek and Romaine, all these fun queer shows. And for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great shows. So learn about that at dnrstudios.com. One other thing I want to plug, the Mismatch Game is coming back to Gay Days Anaheim on Saturday, September 13th. We're going to do our show there. It's become kind of a thing down there. Like, there's people that come back every year, and they know inside jokes from the year before. It's kind of nuts. So learn about that at Gay Days Anaheim. That's enough for the plugs. Here now is my interview with Stephanie Elizondo Griest. Joining me now from North Carolina, it's the author Stephanie Elizondo Griest. Her book is Art Above Everything. I almost said Art is Everything, because that's how I sometimes feel.
That too.
Art Above Everything, One Woman's Global Exploration of the Joys and Torments of a Creative Life. And how your book came to my attention is I have a regular listener and a good friend of mine named Robert, who saw a report on you, I think on NBC News, or it was an online quick video. And he sent me the link and he says, "This is what you talk about all the time. So you need to know about this book." And so I tracked you down on Instagram, and here we are. This podcast is about lifting up creative people, because I think that art and creativity make life bearable. And yet it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do.
It really is.
Yeah. And so your book is sort of about that. And before I dive into it, I just think this might be a metaphor. I have a pen leaking on my hand, which I think it says everything about this, where we are. And it's gotten on your book. Like it's a whole, but you know what? I think it's a metaphor. It's about, it's not easy, right? But
it's not easy,
but we push through. So how do you describe your book to someone that knows nothing about it?
That knows nothing about it? I describe it as a 10-year quest to find women around the world who have, like me, relinquished almost everything for their creative endeavors.
And I listened to the audiobook and then I picked it up and read it. I went through it again, kind of more rapidly to prepare for the interview. But listening to the interview, it was like a travelogue. Oh, we're in New Zealand now. Oh, where are we going next? It was like I felt like I was getting my passport stamped, and it was a wonderful window into all of these different places and these different cultures. Did you notice there are things that they all had in common? Because you really go from Brooklyn to Qatar or New Zealand. You're everywhere. Are there through lines? Are there through lines with these women?
There are through lines. Absolutely, there are through lines. One of the first things that a lot of these women had in common is they discover their art form incredibly early, as in 2 and 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, especially musicians and dancers. They tend to find it immediately.
Yeah.
Wonderful stories of, one person that immediately springs to mind is Pauchi Sasaki, who actually, unfortunately, didn't make it into the book. I had to make some really brutal decisions at the end, which was really, really hard on the heart. But she grew up in Peru, and her mother noticed her at the age of 2, just trying to get to the little knobs on the radio, and she would just mimic the sounds of even static, and trying to register her voice to follow the static. Wendy Whalen, who's considered to be the greatest ballerina of the last century, was in ballet by age 2. And, she hardly has any memory. Her only memory preceding ballet is asking her mother to go to ballet class.
Wow.
So it's really wild. And then the writers I interviewed, and myself included, we began writing, really as soon as we could grasp a pen. So age 6 and 7. So we all found this calling really, really early. We answered it really, really early on. We found our happiness and fulfillment and purpose through this art, and then we could never bear to let it go.
Yeah, I relate so much to these themes. Do you remember an early moment of writerliness or like a specific story you wanted to tell, or how did that register for you early on? Yeah,
so that brings me to my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. So I am half and half. I'm actually kind of everything, bilingual, bicultural, bisexual,
I like it.
All the things,
You just tick all the boxes on the forms, right? Okay.
Check all the boxes, every last box. Yes. So, my grandmother, this is my white father's mother. I also additionally have a Mexican mother. But my white father's mother, my grandmother, Madge, I got to know her through our annual summer drives from Corpus Christi, Texas to Minneapolis, Kansas. So a full-on 13, 14-hour drive. And I loved my grandmother, Madge. She was amazing, so loving and kind and gentle. And we just really had a special bond very early on. And I was really worried that my grandmother, Madge, was lonely because her life, from my vantage point, seemed to revolve around her husband's stomach. So every day, exactly at noon, he wanted full, what in Kansas you call dinner. Right. Full dinner, pork chops, mashed potatoes, gravy, the whole 9 yards. And he would eat it, just feast on it, while my grandmother would spoon cottage cheese over by the sink. And then he would go take a nap. And then she would, as soon as she was done washing the dishes, she would basically have to start, preparing the meal for the 5 o'clock meal.
Wow.
And this was day after day after day. My grandfather never left the house, rarely left the house, because he had been shot in the foot when he was younger and had a really debilitating limp. Anyway, so, and then my grandmother would, when all the dishes were finally done for the day, she would sit down and watch golf tournaments on TV.
Wow.
So, kind of brutal, right? So I, and I loved her so much, and I just saw like such a spark and energy about her. And one day, just as I'm kind of like really coming into consciousness of this, she reveals that she had kept every letter I'd ever written her.
Wow.
And that really struck me. And she said, they keep me company. And she pulled them out of her, bureau, and this big, thick stack of letters. And I just took this as, it is now my duty to keep my grandmother riveted.
Wow. Yeah. You have an audience now. Yeah.
I have an audience. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of transformed over the course of my, early life, before I started steering my own little ship, but just, going through junior high school, like, I need to fill these letters. And so that encouraged me to go out and do interesting things. And by the time my grandmother passed away, we lost her my senior year in high school. By that point, I had just already acquired this mindset. And then I went to a journalism convention in Washington, D.C., my senior year of high school. And there was a keynote address given by Charles Beerbeyer, who was this rock star foreign correspondent for CNN. Mm-hmm. And he gets up and tells the most amazing stories I'd ever heard, riots, revolution, coup d'etat. Like, he's just really like throwing out these unbelievable stories. And when he's done with his oratory, he looks out in the audience and he's like, who's got a question for me? And I ran to the front of the room and I said, I want to be you. What do I do? And he looked at me and he said, learn Russian. Next question. And so that is,
wow.
Yeah. So these are the two things that really formed my life. My grandmother acknowledging that I was writing, and then this man telling me to learn Russian. And so when I went off to college that fall, I enrolled in Russian, studied it throughout college, and then I moved to Moscow to become a foreign correspondent like Charles Beerbeyer.
When was the moment in your studies of Russian where you go, oh, I see why he said this. Oh, this is why.
That was kind of immediately evident. When I arrived in Moscow, it was 1996. The Chechen War was raging, the ruble was falling, the mafia had infiltrated every aspect of society, including my boyfriend. My Russian boyfriend was offered a hit, a murdering contract.
Wow.
While we were together. So it was just a really, really difficult time.
Talk about tough day at work, honey. Like, tough
day at work, yes.
Yeah, how did it go at work? Well, they offered me. That's so, I don't mean to laugh, but that's like out of a thriller. That's out of a movie.
I know, but that was really what happened to young men at that time in Moscow. People were, you kind of had to make a decision at a certain point. Were you going to follow the money, in which case you would become involved in the mafia in some sort of way, or were you not? And then you were kind of consigned to a life of great hardship. Wow. Because Russians just lost all of their pension. They lost all of their savings, during the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then when the ruble fell at that time, and everything was just suddenly worth nothing. Your degrees, he had gone to the top university and studied geology, and there was just not a chance of doing anything possibly remotely related to geology at that time, know? So he was doing hard labor, and it was really, really difficult. So he had to really think about, whether or not to take this killing.
I assume he didn't.
He did not, no.
Yes. Okay, I didn't want to assume, but yeah.
But I also lost touch with him entirely, right? Yeah. So anyway, being there is where I really came into taking notes and bearing witness.
Yeah.
And really taking that very seriously. And that eventually backboned my first book, and, we kind of go on from there. But those are the really pivotal things.
Yeah.
But just, it was what Charles Beerbeyer said really immediately made sense. This was a country where things were really happening, very noteworthy things were happening. But then I also began to interpret it more like, do something that sets you apart, do something unexpected. That's something that will make your CV jump out or whatever. Yeah. Actually, I'm curious to know as to which he meant. If he meant literally like Russian's a strategic language that a reporter should know, or if he meant more just like do something unusual.
Become an expert on something that'll set you apart.
Something.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is a shallow question, but I love Russian accents. I love
They're
them.
pretty cool.
They're so sexy. Like a lot of times the baddies in movies are like Russians, and I'm like, that accent though. I find that I do this podcast sometimes and try to interview other creatives and lift them up as a way of kind of justifying my own choices.
Totally.
Do you relate to that?
Absolutely. I just spent 10 years writing a book the same fucking thing.
I wanted to say that. Like,
I've seen you.
Yeah.
I've seen you here.
And yeah, no, it's, I do it because but it's always justified. It's never like, it's still not murky. Like, it always feels like the right thing to do, even though it's not the lucrative thing to do. I love the way you do solid reporting as a journalist, and then you filter in your own experiences, your own life things, and things that resonate in the culture. And the balance of that is really perfect, and I really like it. Is it does it just come naturally, or do you really think about that? Like how much to put in of your own experiences when you're sort of describing a scene of a dance concert or something?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So that has that style, which is, so my form is a fusion of literary journalism, travel writing, memoir writing. And with this book, I added art criticism into the mix. And so I've been working on developing this style since my early 20s, and I'm now 51. So it's been 30 years in the making. It came about because my first book, which is about my life in Moscow, Beijing, and Havana, it's called Around the Block. That book did not sell. We weren't able to place it because when I was living there, I had no idea I was going to write a book about it. Right. I was just taking notes because it felt like the moral thing to do. So that's like a whole other conversation. But when eventually I began writing a book, being a student of journalism, I wrote it entirely in, third person, and it was really going to be a documentary about life in these places. Nobody wanted that book, however. None of the New York City fancy houses that we approached, they all wanted it to be a memoir about me, which was really baffling to me. I did not understand why would anyone be remotely interested in my perspective. Like the important thing was that this person was being offered a contract killing, those were really serious things that were happening. But anyway, but long story short, the only way we were able to sell the book was when I literally surgically implanted myself.
Wow.
And then that happened several books in a row, until finally I just accepted the fact that is how I am going to be able to sell books in American publishing, is by writing about myself.
But as a reader, I have to say I like those parts because you're our eyes and ears in a way. You know what I mean? Especially as an American in these wild places.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone. When I do book events, people rarely ask me my thoughts about any place that I've written. They only ask me about like very personal questions about myself, and that's actually very interesting to explore through the lens of gender, because my male colleagues do not have that experience.
Right.
My female colleagues all have that experience. So that's interesting too.
That is interesting. Something I've been thinking about recently, and you may have some insights on this. I have 3 good friends that I'm thinking off the top of my head who are not American. One is from Jordan, one is from El Salvador, and one is from Turkey. And all of their I have a bond with them that's unique, and they're not all the same, but it's something different. And I think I like people from other places, and I'm trying to figure out why. And I think they didn't grow up with the American dream or something. Like, I'm not sure. I can't put my finger on it. But in this book, you meet people from all of these other places. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's that thing as Americans, we expect things to work out or whatever, or there's something, I don't know if it's an entitled thing. I'm trying to put my finger on what it is, but all 3 of these people, I love them. And there's something, and there's a connection that's real. And I'm not sure if, and it's not just the sexy accents, although that is a part of it. What have you learned about America from talking to people from all these other places?
Yes. No, so I think that's actually something quite interesting, the entitlement factor. And also I think, so entitlement will ultimately, potentially, I'm hoping, kind of sort of save us. We'll get back to that in a second.
That's interesting. No, because there is something great about the American dream. There is something about it that is it's not all bad, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, authoritarianism has never been successfully achieved on a population as entitled as the United States. And so that may actually be what saves us. So just sort of like our indignant, like, oh no, not on my watch. This is not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Enough of us want to speak to the manager that it's going to be the Karens that save us. That's interesting.
So I do have hope that some of that entitlement will actually end up helping us. But certainly I can say that, yes, most of the majority of the people that I interviewed for this book do not have this sort of inherent expectation that things are ever going to work out.
Right.
And then in some of the cases, they also additionally maybe have social systems that care for them a bit better, and some a bit worse. You know, so that was really fascinating to see what countries actually care for artists and what countries do not.
Cuba.
And then what is possible. Yeah, Cuba, actually.
Cuba, that part of your book really surprised me. They really support their artists.
Cuba really supports their artists. And actually artists, I mean, there are artists who sell watercolors in the market who make more than their doctors because they are paid in US dollars, and, you know, Cuban doctors are paid in Cuban pesos. So that obviously has all matter of ramifications that are very intense and challenging, and that's like a whole other conversation.
Right.
But Iceland, which is a country that really, really supports particularly writers who write in Icelandic, because Iceland is very, very concerned that they're losing their language, partly because of iPhones. They basically have abundant state grants. So if you are writing in Icelandic, you can apply for a state grant every year. Oh. And you essentially get paid like minimum wage to be a writer. And your book, every time it's checked out of the library, you get royalties.
Your head must have wanted to explode. Your head must have wanted to explode when you were hearing all this. No,
I could not believe that. I was just like, wait. Stop the interview. Like,
yeah. Wait, what?
What are you telling me?
I know.
How is this possible?
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise then that the Icelandic women I interviewed all had multiple children, like not just one kid or two kids, but 3 and 4 kids. All of them had kids.
Because they were able to juggle it all. They were able to do it all.
Yeah.
Because the government helped them out.
Exactly.
Wow.
Then writing your novel becomes like, you know, a 9-to-5 job, and then you have time to do other things in your life. Unlike in the United States, generally you're writing your novel in between your other 5 jobs, unless you are born into wealth or marry into wealth. Yeah.
I'm going to share an observation that I thought about myself in the last few years and see if you relate. I think I'm being the person that I'm meant to be in this world. And there's no market for it. But you can't do it. And so to be so sure of those two things is tricky. Thoughts?
Oh my God. That's very succinctly put, of what I have keenly felt throughout my life as well.
Yeah. That's what drew me to your book, and it moved me throughout your book. And we'll get to what you conclude near the end, because I believe that as well. Did you ever see another road? Like, I never saw it. Like, I never saw the uncle with the insurance company saying, hey, just come over here. I'll show you the ropes. Like, there was never another road. There's this anecdote in the Albert Brooks documentary, I think it was on HBO, where one of his, he was telling a story about one of his agents or managers, and all of his projects were falling through. He was having a tough time getting something going at a certain point. Like, he's had a lot of success, but he was on the ropes and couldn't make this thing happen. And one of his agents was like, well, why don't you just take, the easy part and do a role in some other thing? And why do you always have to take the hard road? And Albert Brooks goes, oh, you think I see another road? And I related that to that. I don't know what the other thing is. Did you ever know what the other thing was?
Well, I actually did have other opportunities to step off the road. So what I call this road that you and I have both walked is the path of most resistance.
Okay.
Yeah. And there have been times when there could have been a less resistant road. Right. One of them was when I was just starting to write my first book, Around the Block. I was actually offered a job with the Associated Press. And
right. You write about this in the book.
Yeah. And I had been working, I had like back then when you first got hired with AP, you were like 6 months probation. So I finished my 6 months probation period, and I was offered a real job with real health insurance and a 401k and all the things you're supposed to want. And, but I'd started this book, and I was really torn because it was really clear I was not meant to be an AP reporter. And it was really clear that I was supposed to be a writer, but then how am I supposed to do this? So this is when signs come to play, right? Okay. So what I asked, I was offered the job on a Monday. I had to tell them by Friday, and I'm like, okay, universe, send me a sign. And so for 4 days, I'm just like, looking around,
right.
walking carefully, lifting up little boxes, shaking them,
right.
Signs, please come sign. And I was riding my bike home, because I had no money. So riding my bicycle home from the AP, down Congress Ave in Austin, Texas, and get to my $500 a month efficiency that I was renting month to month.
Right.
Try to find that in Austin, not happening anymore. And I opened up my mailbox, and there, unbelievably, was my very first contract for an essay. Latina magazine accepted the query letter. This is like back in the old days when you mailed your shit, know.
I know it well. That's how I got my first writing job was query letters. Yeah.
And the amount was for $500, which was my rent at the time. And I was like, sign.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So that was one example. And I was like, all right, path of most resistance, let's go. Let's do this. Because I know I'm meant to write a book. And what was really interesting about that, just as a side note, is that immediately all my reporter friends, including the editor, tried to talk me out of it. My editor actually pulled me in his office, and he's like, Stephanie, nobody makes their living writing books. Do you know anybody that makes their living? I was like, no, Right. And what's really tragic is that most of those journalists, my colleagues back then, this is 1999, have lost their journalism jobs, and I'm still writing. So, what do you do with these kinds of things, right? What do you do with this kind of stuff? Anyway, and then there was like an opportunity to get married at one point with someone who made literally 12 times my salary. And, that was a really hard decision. And I instead went to grad school, in Iowa, like path of most resistance, you know what I mean? So, so I did see other roads. I just was afraid of what my life would look like if I took them. And, whereas I just imagined the frustration I would feel.
Yeah.
And then I was always thinking like, I'm young enough to mess up at least a couple of times, right? Like that's what your 20s, 30s are for.
Right.
But then when you can make bad decisions then. Like that's kind of how I justified it in the first 2 decades of my life. But then in 2008, when the stock market fell and all of the contracts that I'd set up for the following year all just vanished overnight, that's when I was really beginning to become fearful for my larger path.
Like, what am I doing? That's of it. Yeah. And I relate to that so much. Yeah. The one thing I do have, and I'm very proud of, is like, for better or worse, I was true to myself. And and that, I could die tomorrow and be fine. Like, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm fine with it. I kind of looking forward to it. You mean I get to be done?
Yeah.
That's something about that sounds good. Do you relate to any of this?
Oh my God. Well, that was my big realization when I got cancer.
Yeah, you write about that as well.
Yeah. So about halfway through this book, when I was 43 years old, I was on book tour for my book, All the Agents and Saints, a book that I also spent a decade working on. I really, really loved that book because it was about the border with my homeland in Texas. And anyway, I gave everything to that book. And I was so excited for the tour. And I was able to get a sabbatical from, I'm now a professor. I was able to get a sabbatical. So I had like 6 months of hard, intense touring ahead of me. And 2 weeks into this 6-month book tour, anyway, it's a long story, but basically something was not right. Go to the doctor. She puts her hands on my belly and looks at me and she's like, any chance you're pregnant? And I'd grown this massive oblong basketball of a tumor on my left ovary. Yeah. And obviously so many emotions fill your whole body when you get a cancer diagnosis. So I don't want to say like I immediately went to this emotion. There was definitely, my initial was like total freak out, body panic, hyperventilating, panic freak attacks. Once that cleared up, and it cleared up actually, I found this really fascinating. I had been plagued by doubt my entire life as to whether choosing the path of most resistance was a wise choice.
Yeah, what am I doing? What am I doing? Yes.
I knew I was being true to myself, but I was also, am I setting myself up for like abject poverty and eating cat food? I was really, really worried about that. And that cancer diagnosis was so many things, but it was also the land bridge from doubt into certainty. And I was just I had this galactic shot of total self-knowledge and certainty. Like, if this is my exit ramp, thank God I did exactly what I did. Thank God I lived my life exactly as I'd lived my life, because I have no regrets, especially since I just published my book. I'm like, all right, my work's done here.
It exists. Yeah. And and that's not a bad feeling to have, to be like,
it is an amazing feeling to have.
Yeah.
So there was another example I'll give you all, that may be helpful for those of you trying to, decide like what it is, how are you moving forward? I once had a really memorable dinner with, someone I met in college who I really loved a lot. And we were, kind of friendly competitors, and, we're always up for the same thing. And one year she'd get it, next year I'd get it. Like, we were just, I really believe in her writing. She's an extraordinary journalist. And she went off, and I don't want to give out too much personal detail, but she, became a high up person in Silicon Valley media that everybody uses on a daily basis.
Right on.
And was making an unbelievable amount of money. And so we had this very memorable meal when at the height of my nomadic phase. So one of the many things I did for my art is I actually gave up living anywhere. So there was a 3-year period where I was totally 100% nomadic. All my stuff was in storage. And I was living on an extended book tour, as well as artist residencies, as well as literally crashing in people's couches. Right. So that went on for like 3 years. Anyway, and things got desperate at times. And anyway, so we're having dinner. She's paying. And so we're, so I'm just enjoying like having a really nice meal on somebody else's dime. And we're eating sushi, and she confesses to me, well, I confessed to her, like, she was just like, wow, you're doing your dreams. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm terrified I'm going to wind up eating cat food, and, by the time I'm 70. And that was my big fear. My big fear was I was going to live a long time and not have any resources and really suffer for these decisions. Yeah. And then she confessed to me. Yes. But then, here's the thing. She confessed to me in her Silicon Valley splendor, I'm terrified I'm going to get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I will not have lived any of my dreams.
Oof.
Oof.
Yeah, these things land like bricks. Like,
yes.
I have a friend that doesn't live here, but when they visit, I can almost feel the ache of the way this friend looks at me and is like, you did it. And I played it safe, and you didn't. And it in a way, it's affirming in a way of my own choices, but it's a bummer because that you feel it, and it's like. And the other thing is, the safe roads aren't that safe anyway, so you might as well do what the fuck you want.
Yes. Okay. Right? This is what I tell my students. Okay, there was a time when you could conceivably pick become an accountant or whatever, and like study something reasonable and. You really know that you're going to get a job. You can have it for the next 30 years. You're going to have retirement. You're going to have this. You're going to have that. And then it's just like, okay, just so as long as I don't have a heart attack, I'm going to have a good little 20 years at the end, right? Those days are so beyond over. So now everything is essentially impossible. And when everything is impossible, anything is possible.
That is the title of this episode. I always pick a quote, right? You might as well. And the other thing I think of is if Trump can become president twice, then anyone can do whatever they want. Like if sort of like all the rules, what rules schmools, like all bets are off. So you might as well go for it. But it is not easy. I love that line about the possible and the impossible. I want to talk about some of the places you went to and the different artists. I won't probably get their names right because they have complicated names. But you talked about Iceland, and my knowledge of Iceland is that it's a beautiful place and that women kind of rock there. But reading your book, I realized it's kind of hard won. So much sexual violence in their history.
Yeah.
And that becomes a theme of this chapter. Because it feels like a great place to say, look, if we let women run stuff, things go pretty great. Exhibit A, Iceland. But the backstory on that and the way it comes to life in your book is rough. Can you talk about how those two things go together, the empowerment and also the history?
Yeah. So the reason I specifically wanted to go to Iceland because the World Economic Forum for many years in a row has declared it to be the best place in the world to be a woman, the most empowered woman live in Iceland, right?
Let's check this out.
It's like 91% patriarchy free.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to go there. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm meeting these women whose books, bring them royalties for getting checked out of the library, right? It's just, and they all have kids and they're all happy and they're all, they
have it all. They're living the dream.
They literally have it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take long to begin. So what first jolted me into an understanding of what was happening, I had been a little bothered by, if you're in Reykjavik, they really play up the whole Viking mythology.
Right.
And so, there's just, the little hat with the horns and, every little tourist shop is selling that kind of stuff. And I didn't even know much about Vikings, but enough to just, anyway, not find it as intriguing as all the other tourists seem to find it.
Right.
But then I learned there was a reason why I felt this way. As I began to do research and interview this one really extraordinary writer named Vilborg Davidsdottir, who is one of the most famous of all novelists in Iceland. So here's the deal. So what was Iceland? Iceland was an empty iceberg,
Right.
An empty, stunning, island with completely bereft of inhabitants except for a few like Irish monks until the Vikings came. And the Vikings wanted to colonize. Well, maybe they kicked out some of the monks, but there was no one to colonize really there. And there were no people there. So what they needed to do was fill it with people. So what they did was they started going up and down, and they'd been doing this already, but continued to go up and down the Irish coast, where they would go in and rape and pillage villages and kidnap young women and men as workers. But the young women were all brought to Iceland, and they became the foremothers of Iceland. So like 62, I think, don't quote me on this, but like in the low 60 percentile of the matrilineal ancestry of Iceland is from Northern Ireland, is from Ireland. That's how we know that that's how they arrived. Whereas the males are like 75% is from the countries that had Vikings, right?
Wow.
Norway and yeah, wild. So the country was sort of founded on rape, and women really had maybe that's a little too extreme of a statement, but there's a lot of sexual violence in the
big part of their history, a big part. And you were shocked by that. Like that wasn't something you had known about really before.
No, not at all. And so that was something that I found incredible about Vilborg Davidsdottir. So Vilborg Davidsdottir wrote the Saga of Korka. And so the Saga of Korka is based, so first of all, just a little background. Sagas are to Iceland like Machu Picchu is to Peruvians, right? So the Icelanders are profoundly proud of the sagas. So what are the sagas? Sagas are these medieval manuscripts that were written by monks in like 11th, 12th century. And written about like the first people to come to Iceland, the Vikings, right? So all these great epic stories and these beautiful, beautiful books have actually survived all of these years. They have survived famines and floods and rot and molds and, people starving and chewing on them. Like they have survived everything. Anyway, so she writes a modern Korka saga, but writes it in the modern age, but about this ancient history. And it's about this 14-year-old girl who is pregnant, and she just has a vision of her one day, and this little girl, not little girl, but 14-year-old girl is in prison, and she's pregnant and she's a slave. And as novelists do, they kind of just start following them, following the character, and it's gradually revealed that this young girl was raped. And while this was happening, she managed to get the knife out of the man's belt and stabbed him to death, and then was on the run. And so this book became the book that has been taught for over a quarter of a century. All high school Icelanders read this story.
So the culture embraced the book. They embraced
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, because it was the first book that ever told about the Vikings from the woman's perspective.
Yeah,
and about that era from the woman's perspective. Before the sagas all glorify men, and so this was really innovative in that it glorified a young woman's survival story. And then during the Me Too movement, so I spent a decade working on this book, and so it's been really wild to watch like what happened in gender relations over the course. So the first big thing that happened was Me Too. I started the book in 2014, and then Me Too happened a couple of years later, and that was a wild time to be working on a book about gender for sure. And that's when Vilborg gathered up the courage. There was like a 25th anniversary celebration of the book, and in front of a huge audience, she told the story of how this had actually happened to her. She had also been sexually abused when she was 14 years old. So that became every chapter I write in this book is art as, art is something, so art is devotion, art is immortality, art is love, art is this, art is that. And so
art is a spiritual orgasm. Is that one of them? One of them.
Yeah. Art is a spiritual orgasm. Yes.
Like, all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
For Vilborg, art is revenge,
art
right?
Is revenge.
She felt like she was getting revenge on this man who did this to her by writing this whole book through it.
Amazing. And, I became a journalist in the 90s, and I was doing a lot of entertainment journalism. So I interviewed all of those Harvey Weinstein women. And
God.
Salma Hayek, Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie. And some of them would come back to me again and again, and they liked me. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I have a thing with these women. And I just thought it was my charm, and I was, fair and prepared. And I just thought I was good at my job and a little charming. And then I read this later, when all of this came to light, I thought, I was a safe haven. And if their day is a meeting with Harvey, this gay journalist, and you know what I mean? Like, I was probably the nicest guy to them that whole day. I don't know. It changed because I met all of them, and they were glamorous, and I loved them, and I rooted for them, and you kind of go in the rabbit hole of red carpets because you're talking about Bjork and all of this and this time, and it's just these themes weaving together. Another time when you are having an experience that is very much of our moment now, that's sort of prescient, is you're having lunch with somebody during the first Trump campaign. I believe it's a woman named Hope. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah.
And Trump is starting to rise in that very first. He's starting to be the leader of the Republican. He's starting to really kind of take the lead in the primary. And the person you're talking to has been through dictatorships, and she's like, uh-oh, right? Can you talk about that lunch and that moment?
Yeah. So we're talking now about Hope Azeda, who is really a renowned playwright, probably one of the most famous playwrights in Africa. And she is from Rwanda. She's Rwandan. She grew up, however, in Uganda in a refugee camp because of the first attempted genocide of the Tutsis, which took place before the one that maybe you're a little more familiar with, which is the 1994 genocide of the Tutsis. So her family had left during the first attempted genocide. And so she grew up there. And she returned soon after the 1994 genocide, in which 1 million people were murdered in 100 days, mostly Tutsi, but also a lot of Hutu and Twa, which are the three different ethnic tribes of Rwanda. So anyway, so this woman has experienced profound trauma, and was not in Rwanda during the genocide, but witnessed all of the ramifications, and also lost many members of her family, including, her intimate family was also killed because her brothers went back to Rwanda as guerrilla fighters right before the war. Yeah. Right before the genocide, rather. So tremendous loss. And she has done so much to overcome that loss. And she has since started this extraordinary festival called the Ubuntu Festival, where she invites together artists from other nations that have experienced genocide to come in, and they perform on top of the interred remains of 250,000 people.
You describe the festival and the experience. It's just unbelievable. The scale of it.
The scale of it is extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So anyway, how I met her, every woman came to me a different way. This woman actually came to my university. I teach at UNC Chapel Hill. And so she was a guest on a panel, and we were all just absolutely blown away by her. And I kind of jumped at the chance, and I was like, can I take you out for lunch? I wanted to talk to her about this book. And she eventually ended up inviting me to go to Rwanda. But anyway, the lunch is what you asked about. So the lunch. There
was a moment when Trump is on the television and she says something.
Yes. And it was March of 2016. So I was not at all thinking about him.
Nobody was really.
Not at all.
Taking him
but
serious.
She did.
She clocked it.
Listened to him, and she said, "Oh, you've got to watch it for him." And I'm not remembering the name of him, but she said that he reminded her of this particular colonel.
Is it Bagasora?
Yes, Bagasora.
I wrote that down. Good. All right.
Yes, Bagasora. You are good. Yes.
Look at this. It's like, I mean, come on.
Oh yeah.
That was a lucky guess. Anyway. I did write that down close to where I wrote down the word hope, so it was just a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
But she said
he was the mastermind of the genocide.
Yeah.
And she's like, when that's what you spew, that's what you reap, right?
Yeah. And she described the people that were following him as drunk on the hatred.
Drunk on the hatred. Yeah.
And I was like, yes, and still. Anyway, so that was powerful. I want to talk about India as well. You went there and you saw these wonderful dancers. And and you write about how it changed your perception of abundance related to art. Like you had a shift. Can you talk about that shift?
Yes. Yeah, so I feel like one of the sad things about my life as a writer in the United States prior to working on this book is that I really felt like I was working at a scarcity model, or just working with a sense of scarcity, right? There's only so many agents, so many editors, so many publishing houses, so many contracts, so many prizes, so many anything, so many speaking contracts. Like
it's a zero-sum game. There's not enough for everyone. Yeah.
For everyone. Right. So, that was just sort of, unfortunately, what I kind of thought it meant to be an artist. India, however, really was extraordinary. And it was also the first sign that, there are other ways of doing this, which is, so what I discovered in India is a Gurukul. So Gurukul is how the classical arts in India were transmitted back in the Vedic period. So basically, the guru, the mighty great artist, would invite students to come and study with them. And the students would be there for a period of 6 years and more. And you don't only take classes with them, but you also, you're in the garden, weeding and harvesting and planting, and you're cooking alongside them. And so you really inhabit all aspects of the guru's life. And so it's just a way of showing, how to live in the world, how to live as an artist, how to live as a scholar, how to live as this brilliant mind. And this is how the arts were handed down in India until the Raj, until the British colonization period, when all of the arts stopped. And anyway, that was obviously great trauma, and that's a whole other story. So then in the 90s, a really extraordinary classical Indian dancer named Pratima Bedi decided to try to resurrect the Gurukul system. And so she got a plot of land a couple of hours outside of Bangalore, and just willed, through the sheer power of her mind and charm, willed this into being and created this dance village. And so everyone who lives in this dance, they're all women, all beautiful women, like stunningly beautiful women dressed in very glamorous saris. And they are dancing from sun up to sundown every single day. And so their art is completely supported, and by one another, they just live in this, and there's no word to describe it. I mean, commune doesn't really get at it. I mean, it's because it's also very rigorous. Alistair McCulley, who was the longtime dance critic for the New York Times, referred to it as the disciplined utopia, which is maybe a bad way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
So, so there it was just, there's no scarcity there. It's instead beautiful women with saris and, trees hanging heavy with fruit and, devotion, and you dance because dance is what fulfills you, and you dance every day and it makes you happy. And there's no ambition other than to dance every day. And they do tour, but they love touring because they love to share
show
this
what
with
they
others.
can do. Yeah.
To show what they can do. Yeah. So that was also something that really, that's kind of what began the journey also. The realization, the wanting to find these women that I call art monks. And that was my introduction to the congregation, and the fact that there is actually a congregation, a global congregation of women who have done this. And there are also other ways of doing this.
So you write about this shift from a more scarcity set to something more abundant. How did that look when you came back to your real life? What are the ways you changed your thinking, or how did it resonate when you were home?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to come to realization is that, I am culturally Catholic, and so are you. We are culturally Catholic by nature of growing up here.
Right.
And what is capitalism? Capitalism is rapacious. And so it is never enough. Nothing ever seems like it is enough.
Right.
So I really tried to grasp holds of that understanding that if I continue, unless I need to start exercising some sort of Zazen level mind control.
Yeah. I think about these things a lot.
Yeah, to stop the want and instead see what is and celebrate what is.
Yeah.
So that is what I am trying to do. Another metaphor that I've thought about a lot over the years is it's like ambition is a mountain whose peak you never see. It's like climbing a mountain whose peak you never see.
That's interesting.
And, so when I got to when I published my first book, I feel like that's when I sort of reached my first little toe peak, right? And I look out and it's like, oh my God, the view, what?
Yeah.
But then I look down and I see all these other writers trying to get to this peak, and I'm like, oh, I should help. But then I hear people going, ooh, and I look up and it's like, oh, those are people that have published their second book, and they're on another little platform, right? And so it's like you have a decision, right? You can only, you can't really climb up and drag people with you, right? So that is this, I've always felt really pulled in those two directions.
Yeah.
But going to India has helped me. And I also went to India the first year of being a professor and teaching, and also just seeing how much I love teaching, and then how important teaching is, and then how teaching is also really an intrinsic part of being part of a lineage, being part of an artistic lineage,
right.
Which is incredibly important now that I can't have kids because I got ovarian cancer. That then began the process of thinking maybe I'm moving more in the direction of wanting to help, and focus more on uplifting others. That is what is, because I'm increasingly losing, not faith exactly, but just, well, this is another thing. Anyway,
I love all this stuff.
Sorry,
I can't get enough of it. These are the things I think about all the time.
All the time, right? Yeah. So, what do you do?
Yeah.
Also, there does come, it feels to me, and this is, I try to get, I need to use more of my Zazen level mind control to get myself out of, because this is a little La Brea tar pit of emotion. But, I also sometimes feel like I have made it as far as I can make it on hard work alone in my literary life. And the only way to actually significantly elevate, there needs to be some kind of divine intervention. Something else needs to happen that I can't through work alone achieve.
Right.
So maybe that is the point also where you're all right, now it's time to really, really, really help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can just hope that Oprah happens upon it or something like that. There's always...
But Oprah, again, it's the scarcity thing, right? Oprah only has... So that's what's so valuable.
Right, that's the thing. That's our only chance is if Oprah shines on us. Yeah, and that's... Right. Yeah, it's a joke, but it's not.
But it's totally not. Yeah. Like Iceland does not have an Oprah. Iceland has state grants that are possible for Icelanders to achieve. Yeah.
There's this great line that I wrote down that relates to this. Let me see if I can find it in my crazy notes. Yeah. Oh, let's see. I view my inability to survive as a bisexual Chicana as a personal failure, not as an institutional one. For a long time, you weren't factoring in the structures, right? And you were beating yourself up about things.
Yes. And so that really came to a head after my first book was published, and especially my second book, when I was doing really heavily touring, and I was getting invited to very fancy events, fancy book festivals. I was the headliner for the Texas Book Festival one year. Not the headliner, but they had this big gala that, it's like $500 to even attend the thing. And anyway, so I started getting these really high, sought after gigs, which was thrilling, the honor of my life. I was so excited about all of this, that was just a deep honor. And also afterward, when all the writers go out and start drinking, you then begin to hear people kind of batting around, their advances. And, I got $10,000 for Around the Block, which is a book that took 10 years to write, a book for which I learned Russian and Chinese,
right?
A book for which, I killed myself for this book, right? Moved back with my parents. I really gave up a lot for this book. And I met a guy who had written a very similar book, similar terrain, same publisher, was not headlining these cons, and he got $100,000 for his book, and I got $10,000 for my book. That just really, how do you explain this, right?
He's a dude. Probably a white dude. Probably a white dude. Let me guess. White dude?
Absolutely. He's a white dude.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I just kind of had these experiences again and again, meeting people that just made galactically more money than I did. And, what do you do with that? Right.
Yeah.
I feel very ashamed of the fact. And so only in this book only now am I actually talking about this publicly, because I've been so humiliated by it all. But I think it's time to talk about these
right.
things.
But the point is, all of these indignities, all of the struggle, it's still worth it. And that's where you kind of land. Yeah. That's where you kind of land at the end. And I relate to that a lot as well. You write about belly dancers, and I was fascinated in that because belly dancing is something that's kind of erotic, just visual it is. And yet the people that do it, they have to balance that thing of being something that is exciting to look at, and yet also very feminine and empowered. And it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating to think of all of it, So talk to me about the belly dancers you met and what surprised you about them, or what you took away from getting to know them.
Yeah. So belly dancing is a super complex issue. I myself was a belly dancer in my 20s, and I can say that it was hands down the most joyful bodily experience of my life.
Incredible, right? To do it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I loved it so much. And also it's problematic. And I left because of that fact. And I'm not saying that was the right decision or the wrong decision, but it was my decision at that time to leave, because this was, I left it in around 2004, I just started feeling like something, I was nervous about doing something, or felt guilty about doing something that was appropriating a culture that was being so maligned. This was during the Iraq War, and it just started feeling wrong.
Right.
And I'm not saying that is a correct way of thinking, but that is definitely how I was thinking. And so I did leave it, and I missed it profoundly ever since. I still miss it to this day. So there's that. Anyway, there's so much more to say. And then there was an article that came out about white white woman's appropriation of belly dancing, and how now in the Middle East, when you go to nightclubs, you don't even see Middle Eastern women dancing. You see Ukrainian and Russian women doing it, or Venezuelan women doing it. You know, you rarely see actually like Algerian women or Egyptian women, Lebanese women. So I just want to like preface it all with, this is obviously a very complicated thing.
Right.
And also, when I had all of my female reproductive organs removed, surgically removed, and got chemo and lost all of my hair and suddenly lost 25 pounds that I wasn't actually looking to lose, and suddenly did not recognize myself in the mirror within such a short period of time. I mean, it was like radical physical difference in a really short period of time. All I could think is, my God, the only thing that's going to get me through this is belly dancing. And
really?
So, yeah.
That's what occurred to you as like a thing that would help.
Yes. I knew immediately that belly dancers would help me. And thank God I was just at that moment on my way to Miami when I kind of came to this realization. That was one of the first flights I was able to do after chemo. You have to fly time after chemo. One of my first flights was to Miami, where I went to this belly dancing convention. And there I met, and belly dancing conventions are a good time. Let me tell you. I bet. And there was this extraordinary woman named Tiffany Hanan Madera, who was about to throw her second Havana Habibi belly dancing festival.
In Cuba.
So, yeah, in Havana, Cuba. Yeah. So I met her 4 weeks before the festival, and I'm like, I'm buying a ticket and I'm coming, sister. So she let me come on, even though the registration had closed. She let me come in. And that is, full stop, what got me through cancer recovery.
So you were there, you were reporting, you were doing interviews, but were you also dancing when you were there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
To the extent that I could, because they were so other level. I hadn't danced in like 15 years, 20 years, and these were like highly amazing dancers. So very quickly I began looking ridiculous in the workshop, so I'd have to sort of step aside because of my pride. But I tried to dance along.
You got in there. You go to, is it pronounced Qatar or Qatar?
You can say it either way. Yeah.
What was interesting is that there's that incredible wealth there. And so that was sort of a factor in some of the people you were talking to. Just these interesting characters, like I wrote down the name and I'm probably going to get it wrong. Sheikha Al Magassa?
Sheikha Al Magassa. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talk to me about her.
The Sheikha. Okay, yes. She's fascinating. So she, at the time of my writing, was the daughter of the emir. Now she's the sister of the emir. So the emir is like the royal king.
Right.
And not only like royalty, but also like holy royalty. Like just, there are few people that are more revered by their people than the emir of Qatar. Right. So very high altered person. Also incredibly powerful and wealthy person. So she's the daughter, and she really fascinated me because she went to Duke University.
Yeah, and she was like a college kid that was curious about all this stuff, and then she
all this stuff
is now in this role where she kind of has to play a part.
Yeah. So while she was in college at Duke, and I know this because I actually I drove over to Duke University and spent some time with one of her professors. And so her professor was recounting to me how this was such an extraordinary student, and her big ambition at that point in her life was to make a film. And they actually designed a whole study abroad program around this was a magnificent film that was going to travel all throughout the Middle East. And anyway, so they follow the footsteps of this Pope and, just this whole thing. And then she went to Columbia University and she started working with the Tribeca Film Festival, and she had meetings with Scorsese, and she was like, young 20-year-old.
She was a go-getter.
She's like, I'm going to get this film made.
Yeah.
But then her father, the emir of Qatar, called her home. She did not finish her studies at Columbia. She went back to Qatar, and she was then handed basically the checkbook.
Yeah.
She was given a $1 billion. There's no confirmation, but this is what everybody says. So a purported $1 billion annual budget a year, more than all the museums in New York City combined, a year.
To use for art, to
use for buying art,
yeah,
for purchasing art, because that was when Qatar wanted to move into sort of soft power and doing this through the culture and through the arts, and so spent an exorbitant amount of money building these extraordinary museums. So the idea being that now Arabs don't have to travel to France to see famous works of art, or to the United States. They can actually go and stay within the Middle East. And so she was buying works by Cezanne and, all of these major pieces. Yeah.
What a life to go from, wanting to do your own thing and learning and all that to having to, having all this money. Like it was just such an interesting window into a different place.
Yeah, it really is. And so I think she's an interesting example of like, where I am myself, should I be helping students or should I be, climbing the mountain of what I seem to think is success? Maybe she felt that, should I work on my film that will, benefit a smaller number of people, or should I work on creating making this beautiful art splendor for all Qataris to enjoy.
Right. And you can kind of feel that tension in your interactions with her. And also like you sense that she's trying to slip in her own taste or her own thing. You feel that.
Yeah. Oh, I should also just make a little, correction here. I did not get to interview her.
Oh, you didn't get to interview her. Yeah. Okay.
No. This is all research. Did not get to. She is a hard person to reach.
There was somebody that you met though in Qatar that I think I wrote it down.
Yeah, Fatima Al-Shabani.
Fatima, yeah.
And Khana Al-Saldi. I actually interviewed. I interviewed a number of Qatari, which was amazing, and also very nerve-wracking because I was very anxious about writing something that would make their lives difficult.
And the protocols and the structures, even with the assistants, there was this dynamic where even the nice ones ignored the assistants. Like, and like those little details, it's just a fascinating, all these different windows. I want to talk about Sandra Cisneros, who is, you got to spend time with in Mexico, and she's a novelist, very acclaimed, and you'd admired her for a long time. So it was kind of like you're meeting all these people that you were learning about, but then somebody that had meant so much to you in your life and getting to like stay with her in her home. And she was somebody that had kind of lived the dream and yet still has these questions, right?
Absolutely.
Talk about your time with Sandra.
Yeah. So Sandra Cisneros is, you all may recognize, she's the author of The House on Mango Street.
Which I picked up. I'd not read before, and I'm about halfway through it. It's a miracle of a book.
Extraordinary. It's such a beautiful book.
And it's a bite-sized miracle. Like, how does she capture so much so succinctly? I don't know. It has a magical power to it. Anyway.
It really does, yeah. And so this book sold, I think, 8 million copies now around the world. It's just, and she was the first Latina to be published by such a major house, and definitely, the most iconic writer that Chicanos will have ever had and probably will ever have. Like, she is our madrina. And madrina meaning godmother. So she's the godmother of all of Chicana writers, rather, Mexican-American writers in particular. Just so profoundly beloved. So going to her house was like my version of going to royalty,
Just like going to meet the wizard in a way. Like,
yeah. And she's also hands down like one of my all-time favorite interviews, just because she's so funny. She's hilarious and really deeply honest. And calls it like it happened. And the first thing she said was, I'm so glad we're doing this interview because nobody ever talks to me about the artist's struggle, where she profoundly struggled. She struggled so much that she became suicidal in her early 30s because she had, all of her cousins and family members had gone on and gotten the husband and the house and the kids and the job and the health insurance. And she had none of those things. And when The House on Mango Street first came out, it sold 500 copies. And, I think even fewer than that. I mean, it was, it took an intervention of a very powerful agent to change, her writer faith. But there was this period where it didn't seem like anything was ever going to go. And it, in her words, made her a little bit crazy. Like, because she wanted this dream so badly and also didn't feel there was anything else she could do.
She'd done all she could, and it hadn't worked out. Yeah.
And so she was on the verge of ending it all for herself when she got the call that she'd won an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts. So just to also kind of drive further that point, right? My Facebook feed is full of all of these devastated writers who applied for the NEA last year, and that just got pulled. Like, we no longer have this grant for writers. You know, the few things that we actually have in this country supporting writers has now been, it's now gone the way of all things. It's now been banished. Desaparecido. So yeah, I know more than one story of a writer literally saying, this grant saved my life, and now we don't have them.
Yeah. I've heard of somebody in my community recently. A friend of a friend or something posted about, like, it's just like these trees falling around you in the woods. Like, it's one thing after another. But I was so happy you got to spend that time with Sandra Cisneros.
Me too.
And I think that's where you found out you got your condo, right? And
yes.
And she talks a lot about, you have to have your own house, you have to have a place, like. And so that those themes resonated with you getting your own condo and buying furniture and stuff for it and things.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of a little bit more about detail about that story, she had just published her book, A House of Her Own, or A House of My Own, which is a book of essays, but she writes about getting her first house. And so flashback to my life, I'd been nomadic for a long period of time. By the time I finally became a professor, I felt very developmentally stagnant because I didn't even own a fork. I had plastic plates.
You had no cutlery. You write about having no cutlery. You're used to futons.
Yes. Milk crates for my bookcases, right. So that's where, I continued living like that when I became a professor, because I'm like, am I going to even stay in this job? Like, am I going to
just don't know.
Yeah. I just didn't know. And then I'm like, well, should I be waiting until I get married before I buy actual cutlery? Like, what, it was all very confusing. And, but then after I'd been a professor for like 5 or 6 years, I'm like, well, I may actually be staying here. So then I thought, well, I guess I should finally start like looking like I am going to stay here and, actually living here. So I went on the market, and thank God I did this in 2019. Like if I had waited even a year, obviously the housing market completely changed in 2020. So thank God I suddenly thought in 2019, I should buy something. So, and I realized I couldn't afford anything. So this is a tenured professor, not being able to afford anything in her small college town in the South. That just didn't seem quite right. But then, so I spent 8 months going to house after house after house, nothing I can afford. My budget was $315,000. I was just not finding anything anywhere near that. And then one night I'm like swiping on Zillow,
right.
I swapped out swiping on Bumble for swiping on Zillow. And, so I'm looking on Zillow, swipe. And then suddenly a house drops and it's for $260,000. And I could not believe it. And I'm like, how is this possible? And, we look up the owner, and it turns out she's an 80-year-old activist who thought that price gouging was morally irresponsible. And so she wanted to sell it for what she actually got it, which was unbelievable. And so I wrote her a long letter and gave her a copy of my most activist book, and got the house.
Wow. You wrote your way into this dream house. That's fun. Is that where you're coming to us from now?
That's where I am right now.
Yes, look at that. But when you got it, when you wrote about it, it was that thrill of like, oh, like a win. It was wonderful. So I love that. Let me see if I have more places on my notes that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Oh, I'm fascinated with the House of the People in Romania.
Yeah.
This
wild
edifice.
Yeah.
That was like built for a dictator, right? And then the whole, they fell, and you're stuck with this monstrosity. You walked through it, right?
I did. It was
it was designed by a young woman, which is fascinating.
It was designed by a young woman named Anca Petrescu, is that her name?
Yeah, Anca, that's right. I wrote it down. Yeah.
Yes, Anca Petrescu. Yeah, so this is fascinating. Okay, so speaking of authoritarian dictators, that would be Nicolae Ceausescu. So Nicolae Ceausescu ran Romania under his thumb for like, I think 27 years, a really, really, really brutally long dictatorship. So just like a little side note, friends, dictatorships do not get democratically voted out of office. Dictatorships must be violently overthrown, or you wait. Your choice is basically wait 27 years for them to die, or be overthrown. Like that's how they.
Those are the two ways they end.
Yeah, so far in history, that's how they've gone down. So Nicolae Ceausescu actually was the wait 27 years and then overthrow him. So it took that long for people to finally be like, yeah, no mas, ya basta. So Nicolae Ceausescu, early in his reign, was going around and visiting. He went to China, saw Mao Zedong, and saw like these military parades, and saw Mao Zedong basically took over the Forbidden City,
right?
This extraordinary structure on Tiananmen Square, beautiful, like ancient village that the emperor once lived in, and so he took over that, right? And so he kind of, and then he went to see Kim Il Sung in North Korea, and basically was kind of getting the impression like, to do it right, you need
right. It was
really,
like his Pinterest board. It was like a crazy. But Trump is the same way with the gold.
Exactly,
the gold.
That's what he's doing to the White House.
It's so resonant, like it's so. And you look at the pictures and you think that can't be real. He's not really doing all that gold leaf. And he is, but this edifice ended up it's gigantic, right?
So he wanted a building, right? And so then he like puts out a call, and all the architects of Romania are submitting plans for this, and he doesn't like any of them. He doesn't like them, no. And finally, a 24-year-old recent grad student is like, those things ain't got the bling,
He wants the bling. Like, I see where this taste is going.
Yes. So she then made apparently this completely obscene, on styrofoam, like with gold glitter, sprinkled all over it, made this crazy pop-up, diamond studded, rhinestone studded model. And so she comes, carrying this thing, and all these professional architects with theirs, and, the dictator just like walks by and goes to hers and like, that one.
Yes.
So suddenly a 24-year-old woman is now in charge of building what at the time was the, I think, second largest administrative building in the world, the most expensive building in the world, and to this day remains the heaviest building in the world because it's all made of marble.
And they completed it during his reign. Like, he was still in charge when
that's the thing. They did not.
That's the thing, right?
They didn't complete. He never got to use it. So it is as deep in the earth as it is tall, because it was going to be like this massive nuclear bunker. And you should really look it up. So just type in.
It's just fascinating. And you visited. You visited.
It's totally crazy. And the people overthrew him before he got to use this house.
The dream house.
And this violent overthrow, and he was like literally put against a concrete wall with his wife, and they were shot on Christmas Day, and that image was beamed into Romanian, living rooms all throughout Christmas, and the Romanians like had the biggest party of their life, celebrating the death of the dictator. So it was really, really wild. And then they had to decide what the hell to do with this building, because it was not yet finished, and it was too expensive to finish, but even more expensive to tear down. So now Parliament uses it.
Yeah. And you got to walk through it and all of that stuff. But I love that, though. I love that the architect was like, this guy's got really tacky taste. I'm just going to go all the way there. And she won the contract. Yeah. Yep. I'm going to throw out a few like general questions about your book.
Yeah.
When was a time in the reporting of it or the writing of it that you remember crying?
Oh, wow. I probably cried at almost every country.
Well, also when people are doing their art, when they're dancing or singing, I bet that stuff was overwhelming at times.
It is totally overwhelming. And, I really was searching for a woman whose art moved me to tears. And
right.
I should also say I don't cry very easily.
I cry at the drop of
Oh, you do?
I'm surprised I haven't cried more in this interview. I really am. But go ahead. That's all right. Things are right there. It's not bad. It's just the things are so close, right?
Oh, that's really, thank you for saying that. Yeah. But all of these women's art, did move me to tears, or they would say some, but I think maybe if you're feeling emotional right now, right, it's because you're feeling seen. And so these women in the course of the interview, so it's exactly like I'm in, your shoes, right. And listening to someone echo and affirm. Affirmation is so important when you're an artist. It's maybe one of the most important things. You just want to know you're not crazy. You just want to know you're not alone.
Yeah.
You just want to know that there is reason why you are following this path of most resistance.
Yeah. When was the time when you really couldn't believe what they had overcome? When the scale of what somebody had overcome? I mean, there's so many of those stories in your book.
There's so many of those stories. Yeah. So one person we haven't yet spoken about, so maybe I'll use her as this example, is Meherangi. Mama Meherangi. So I knew before even beginning this book that as soon as I decided to write this book, I'm like, and there will be a Maori, because my previous book.
This is in New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. I really wanted, I'd previously written a book that was partially based in the Mohawk Nation of Akwesasne, and Mohawk are kind of recognized as one of the more empowered indigenous groups in the United States. And the Maori are recognized as one of the most empowered in the world. It's like just a really incredible nation of indigenous people that have really fought very hard to maintain their sovereignty. So I knew I wanted to interview a woman and Maori. And her life really was so unbelievably difficult. Her parents were musicians. Her father was a drummer, like my father. And her mother was a singer in the style of Chaka Khan. And so she grew up on the road, on tour with her parents, who unfortunately developed quite a drug and alcohol habit. And so were not aware when Meherangi began being abused by the person they hired to be her babysitter. So she had to overcome abuse of the kind that I have really not ever heard before. And this is as someone who's interviewed many, many, many dozens of survivors of rape over the course of a long career, and also working with students who also write often about their sexual abuse. So just a nightmare situation. And then trying to make it as a musician, moving to Australia when she's like 15, 16 years old, everyone putting all of this pressure on her, being, sexually harassed by everyone from the manager to the guitarist to the concert promoters, everyone wanting to do this. And she just had to overcome so much. And her way of finally being able to get out of the system of violence and oppression was to really lean into her indigeneity. And she developed, and she's an unbelievably talented artist. She's extraordinary.
What is her form? It's performance.
Yeah. So what she does is she discovered her freedom through a loop pedal. So loop pedal enabled her to set her own tracks. So she basically, in concert, she'll start off just she'll just like start, make it, and then she'll make like these bird calls, and she loops and loops and loops and loops. And she spends like the first 5 minutes making these really crazy sounds. And then she starts to do like a drum beat, and then she starts to get a guitar. And then, so she just makes a concert, and then she really goes nuts.
Things really kick in. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Then she really kicks in and makes the music, and it's all Maori, she's singing in Maori, and this enabled her to fire all those jerks.
Right. And was she the one that was on a television show and got a lot of exposure?
Yes. She was on New Zealand's Got Talent.
And it kind of blew things up for her.
Totally blew things up for her. Yeah. Yeah. But, overcoming the system of addiction and sexual abuse was really, one of the most intense stories I heard.
You write about her, I think when you're visiting her, she's working on something that she sells. And I was like, oh, it's like the band that sells the T-shirts. It's like she's got to worry.
Yes.
She's got to do her own merch. She got to do her own. And I just like these incredible artists with their T-shirts and their merch. Like, you got to.
Yes, yes. Well, this is also a thing, right? So she used to simply sell CDs, and she used to sell hundreds of CDs at $30 a pop every concert she gave, and would always sell out of CDs because she's extraordinary. And then as soon as, Spotify came around and services like that completely ended it. So now she spends thousands of hours, on the floor with, doing beadwork and making tinctures, and just the amount of work she now has to do to make up for the CDs that used to be so easy to sell.
All of these things. I think she's the one that you asked, I think you asked, and I think about this all the time. How do you keep going? Do you remember what she said?
Yeah, so this is now we're talking about Ayanna Evans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Ayanna Evans is, I love Ayanna Evans. Ayanna Evans is from Southside Chicago.
Yeah.
And her art is about making the labor of Black women hyper-seen. And so how she does this is she will dress like in a palm dress with tiara and, a boa and 7-inch platform heels, and will literally go into traffic in Manhattan, go into the traffic and do jumping jacks for like half an hour. So she just does these insane physical feats.
Kind of like performance art on steroids.
Performance art. Yeah. So I asked her this question.
Yeah.
And, how do you keep going? And she's like, faith.
Yeah.
Blind, stupid faith. So that's what I, to kind of bring it back, my search in this book was for art monks.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be an art monk, right? We have actually a lot more in common with monks than we maybe realize we do, right? We are equally devoted. We spend all of these hours, just as monks spend all of these hours praying for the souls of the world, souls they will never meet. Artists do that too. We are doing our own form of prayer. We are singing prayer. We are dancing prayer. We are writing prayer, also for souls we will actually never meet. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and you also write something, and
we have to have faith.
Yeah. Well, also, for people that will never see, healing wounds you will never see. There were all these metaphors for for what you do and for the people that you hope connect to it, but you don't often hear from them. I don't often hear much, and that's okay. But one of the things you write about is that you like the idea that your work could make people feel less alone.
Yeah,
and I think that
another original impetus. Yes,
right. That's one of my original. I think about that when I try to boil down what am I doing? Why am I doing this? That's a big driver. I just have two more questions. One is totally,
and also like getting back to the monk thing, right? Yeah. It's like there's this idea. Yes, Jesus loves you. These monks really do. These monks really do love you. They love you enough to pray for you. They really want you to be elevated, and so do artists. Artists used to be sponsored by the church. Maybe we're going to have to return to that model, right? Artists used to be, that's how painters used to get paid. It was by going to churches and painting.
Yeah.
The earliest women writers were nuns affiliated with churches. Sor Juana, these things are actually really, really linked.
Yeah. I have one random question. I wrote a 3-episode podcast series about Selena, the singer, and I know you grew up in Corpus Christi, or part of your life. So was Selena a big thing for you? I can't imagine she wouldn't have been.
So I would love to say I was super cool in listening to Selena.
Yeah.
Alas, I was obsessed with U2.
Okay, no, that's cool. They're really cool.
I'm very sad because there's a chance I could have seen her because I was, she was playing all the time. My sister actually met her over lunch once.
Right.
So, all people my age have these amazing Selena stories.
And I bet she was always nice to them because in my research, there was something really lovely about her. Like you could not love her. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've actually done a lot of, so there was a moment when she was going to be in my last book, All the Agents and Saints. And so I've interviewed her father. I've interviewed her sister. I've done a deep dive into Selena's life. I've yet to write the Selena piece that I hope to someday
Well,
write.
I
But
can't
yeah,
wait for it. I'm glad I asked about it. I didn't know you had done the reporting and stuff. That was something you were interested in.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. You're also a teacher.
Yes.
There's a part of me that's the age that I'm at where I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm not going to be here for that much long. I feel for young people. I feel like we haven't set them up very well. What have you observed about them? Are there reasons to feel hopeful? Are there reasons to root
absolutely.
for them? Like, what's going on?
Absolutely. No. So, okay, that's an interesting question. So, something that I think is really important so speaking, you and I are Gen X, you're Gen X, yeah?
I'm Gen X, yeah.
Yeah, Gen X, right. So I think that us Gen Xers need to keep in mind when talking to these young folks.
Exactly. No, I feel like that sometimes, but I feel for them. I feel for them.
Oh my God, absolutely. But also they have only known catastrophe.
Yeah.
They have only known catastrophe. They have not known stability. Okay?
They didn't know the 90s when our biggest problem was, Lewinsky scandal or the,
right.
The 90s, though they were, the things in the news didn't affect your day-to-day life in the way, like.
Right.
Yeah.
They did not know the 90s. They did not know they came of age with their parents suffering from 2008. They came of age during the ascendancies of our current regime. They came of age during COVID. They have just seen the United States in really challenging moments, and they've only known this kind of catastrophe. So the quickest way to get them to roll their eyes is to say unprecedented, right? They're so sick, like their whole life, all they have ever heard of is unprecedented. Like they're like, no, this is all we have known.
Yeah.
And so that's actually
so interesting.
And that's actually really scary because I was in Moscow and I saw the evidence of what that does to young people. So when I was in Moscow, everyone my age, the jaded level was really something to behold because all they had known was chaos and catastrophe. And so that can cause you to dissociate, which is really, really challenging. But that's also why an American entitlement might actually come to help, right? Because there is still that. And so we still have, unlike other countries that have gone through a lot of hard times, we still have this sense that things should be right and better and that we should be able to achieve a dream. And so I'm imagining there will come a point when that bubbles up and causes, hopefully, change.
A positive change.
But I will say I'm a fan. My students are extraordinary. They are brave. They see through everything happening. They're super smart. They are deeply interconnected. They're anxious, but they're very on it. And I have all reason to hope.
They give you hope.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
100%.
Tell people how they can follow you, how they can find your book, what they need to do to become fans like I am.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that is such a lovely question. So, yes, my book is called Art Above Everything. It is on sale now, and I'm actually doing a 35-city book tour through the end of the year. So chances are high I'm coming to a city near you. I'll actually be in LA in November.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. Oh my God, it would be so fun. Let's please have lunch. That would be amazing.
I would love that. I'm into it. We will connect on that. Here is my final question. What is this reporting that you've done, writing this book? It feels like you've been entertaining the ideas we all need to be entertaining at this moment as an American. Say something to make me not want to crawl under a rock. Yeah. Basically what I'm saying is you've sort of been in this terrain for a while.
Yeah.
What can we be thinking about? What can we be doing? How do we avoid giving into despair?
Yeah. So I can say that artists always find a way. The creativity that you have been developing through your art will also lead you to finding a way to survive whatever comes our way, be it war, be it all the very extreme things that happen to all of these artists that I've interviewed, which is genocide, which is assault, which is divorce, which is miscarriage, which is cancer, which is all of these things. your creativity will enable you to survive that. So that is something you absolutely do have to have faith in. And that will show you the way. I also really believe in taking these tender skills that you have given your life to and finding a way to move toward justice with those skills. If your art has set you free, you now must turn and free someone else. Toni Morrison said something really similar to that, and I believe that with my whole being. So that is our task right now. Artists are, I'm sorry to say, artists do tend to be somewhat high up the list of targets, and traditionally in authoritarian regimes. And so we will need to use our creativity to stay 2 steps ahead.
Yeah. I've loved this conversation. I loved your book. There are big ideas in it, big themes, unusual places, but it's very readable. It just flows. The details, the reporting is all there, but it's like a good friend is showing you these places. It's accessible and like immediate and visceral and beautifully written and not flashy in a way. Like I want to sing the praises of the actual writing too, because I just loved listening to it because I was like, where are we going next? Who are we meeting next? What's happening next? And so congratulations on a beautiful book. I've loved this conversation. I can't wait to hang out with you in LA. And so thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It means everything that you've read it with such attention and love. Thank you.
It's beautiful. And my friend Robert was like, you're going to like this book. This is like your thing. So,
cool.
Yeah. So shout out to Robert for turning me on to it. Excellent. Thank you.
It was the best.
Okay.
Ciao.
I'm going to go dry my tears and wash the ink off my hands.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Wow.
I fidget with pens when I interview people, but I don't know. A leaking pen is such a metaphor for my whole life. No, it's good though. It's good. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Look, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. All right. You are beautiful.
You are. Ciao. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you again to Stephanie Elizondo Griest for the wonderful conversation, for giving me so much time. Pick up her book, Art Above Everything. All right, so this happened. I went to see the musical Shucked this week at the Pantages. The Pantages has been doing these LGBTQ nights once during every show, and they're like $39 tickets, and you get a free drink. And the Pantages is never that affordable for these Broadway tours. So I was able to go and do that with some friends. I guess the impetus was the creators of it, which the composers are Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark, I believe. They were thinking they could do an updated version of Hee Haw and the old TV show, and I guess the rights were taken or they couldn't, so they just kind of did their own version of Hee Haw. It ended up being called Shucked. It's about this town where they're into corn and there's problems with the corn, and they bring in this outsider to help solve it. And it's what was really striking about it is they have all these dumb jokes in it. Somebody compared them at intermission to dad jokes, but dad jokes aren't that funny. These jokes are really funny, and I think they're really hard to write and really hard to come up with. So whoever wrote the book, hats off to them. It was a fun time at the theater. I wore a jumpsuit. I have a jumpsuit era. And apparently it's not over. Anyway, Shucked was fun, and I'm glad I got to see it. It was on my dream board after all. So I'm sitting there and the curtain's going up and I'm like, dream come true. All right. And then you're like, oh God, I hope I don't get a parking ticket or whatever. Like you're still worried about every other thing in the world. So there's that. All right. Go see it if you get a chance. It's fun. All right, that's enough for this week. I want to thank Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.